Bella threw a coffee mug at my head in front of our marriage counselor, then immediately started crying and told him I had pushed her first. That was the moment I realized 5 years of everyone believing I was the abusive husband was about to end. That very night, I packed my bags and disappeared from her life forever. Everyone was shocked. After all, Bella and I had been the perfect couple who met at university, and I had always been known as the gentle, soft-spoken guy who wouldn't hurt a fly. When Bella confronted me frantically at my lawyer's office, just because I got a little emotional in therapy, "Can you stop being so dramatic? Marriage takes work, doesn't it?" I just looked her dead in the eyes and said, "The night before that session, remember what you told your sister about your strategy with Dr. Peterson? Should I help you recall that conversation?" Her face went completely white, and for the first time in 5 years, she had nothing to say. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. If this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Bella and I met during our junior year at Westfield University. I was studying engineering, spending most of my time in the library or computer lab while she was majoring in psychology with a minor in theater. Our paths crossed in the most ordinary way possible. We were both reaching for the same book on stress management in the psychology section. "Sorry," I said, pulling my hand back. "You can take it." She smiled, and I was immediately struck by how genuine it seemed. "I'm writing a paper on cognitive behavioral therapy, and you look like you could use some stress relief." She wasn't wrong. It was finals week, and I'd been surviving on coffee and maybe 3 hours of sleep a night. We ended up studying together that evening in the quiet corner of the library, and I found myself more relaxed than I'd been in months. Bella had this way of making everything seem manageable, like she could see solutions where I only saw problems. Was naturally introverted, the kind of guy who preferred small groups and quiet conversations. Throughout elementary and high school, I'd been an easy target for bullies. I was tall, but lanky, soft-spoken, and preferred reading to sports. Teachers often dismiss my complaints with comments like, "Maybe you need to stand up for yourself more, or boys will be boys." But Bella seemed to see something different in me. During that first study session, when some rowdy fraternity guys started being loud nearby, she didn't hesitate to walk over and politely, but firmly ask them to keep it down. "My friend is trying to concentrate," she said with such confidence that they actually apologized and moved to another area. "You didn't have to do that," I told her when she returned. "Of course I did," she replied. Everyone deserves to feel comfortable in the library. That night, as we packed up our books, she looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, Liam, you're really kind." Not everyone would have offered to let a stranger take the book first. Something about the way she said it made my heart skip. I'd never. Had someone noticed my kindness before most, people seemed to interpret it as weakness. Over the following weeks, we became inseparable. Bella had this magnetic personality that drew people in. She was involved in the drama club, volunteered at the campus counseling center, and seemed to know everyone. When she introduced me to her friends, she always did it with such pride. "This is Liam. He's one of the smartest people I know, and he has the biggest heart." For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen and appreciated. Bella was fiercely protective of me in those early days. When a professor publicly criticized one of my presentations, calling it overly technical and lacking emotional intelligence, Bella stayed after class to speak with him. I don't know what she said, but the professor approached me the next week with a much more constructive attitude. "Your girlfriend is quite the advocate," he mentioned. "She helped me understand that different people have different communication styles." I hadn't even known she'd spoken to him. I thanked her. She just shrugged. "People need to appreciate you for who you are, not try to turn you into someone you're not." Our relationship deepened quickly. Bella understood my quiet nature and never tried to change it. Instead, she seemed to complement it perfectly. Where I was cautious, she was bold. Where I was analytical, she was intuitive. We balanced each other in ways that felt almost magical. 6 months after we met, I was completely in love with her. She was the first person who made me feel like being sensitive and gentle were strengths rather than weaknesses. About post-graduation job interviews kept me awake at night. She'd hold me and tell me that any company would be lucky to have someone with my integrity and intelligence. "You're going to change the world, Liam," she'd whisper, "not through force or aggression, but through genuine care and brilliant problem solving. That's so much more powerful." During our senior year, we started talking about the future. Bella had been accepted to graduate school for clinical psychology at Hammond State University, about 3 hours from my hometown of Brookstone Valley. I'd received a job offer from TechVantage Solutions, a growing software company in the same city. "It's like the universe wants us to be together," Bella said, when we realized we'd both be in the same area after graduation. The night before graduation, we were lying on the hill behind the student center, looking up at the stars. Bella turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before, vulnerable and hopeful at the same time. "Liam, I want you to know that meeting you changed my life. Before you, I thought I had to be with someone who matched my energy level. Someone loud and outgoing. But you showed me that the quietest people often have the loudest hearts." I felt tears building in my eyes. "Bella, you saved me. You made me believe that I'm worth something." "You were always worth everything," she said softly. "I just helped you see it." We moved in together that fall, renting a small apartment in Millbridge Commons, a quiet neighborhood halfway between her university and my office. The first year of living together was everything I'd dreamed it would be. Bella was working toward her master's degree while I was learning the ropes at my first real job. We fell into comfortable routines. I'd make coffee in the mornings while she checked her emails, and she'd cook dinner while I told her about my day. Our friends saw us as the perfect couple. "You two are going to be together forever, Bella's roommate from college, Emma, told us at a dinner party. It's like you were made for each other." Even my usually skeptical mother adored Bella. "She brings out the best in you, sweetheart," she told me during a phone call. "I've never heard you sound so confident and happy." Bella seemed to thrive in her graduate program. She was passionate about helping people, often staying late to volunteer for crisis hotlines or assist with research projects. Her professors praised her natural empathy and intuitive understanding of human psychology. "I think I'm really good at reading people," she told me one evening as we walked through Riverside Park. "Sometimes I can sense what someone is feeling before they even realize it themselves." Looking back, I should have paid more attention to that comment. At the time, it just seemed like another example of her incredible emotional intelligence, the quality that had drawn me to her in the first place. But there were small moments, even then, that I didn't fully understand. Like the time she got frustrated when I disagreed with her about which movie to watch. Her face had changed completely, just for a split second, showing a flash of something cold and angry. But then she'd smiled and said, "You're right. Let's watch your choice." And I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Or the way she sometimes corrected me when I told stories to our friends, insisting that details happened differently than I remembered. "Liam's memory isn't always the best," she'd say with a loving laugh, and everyone would chuckle. I started doubting my own recollections and deferring to her version of events. These moments were so brief and seemed so minor that I dismissed them entirely. After all, Bella loved me, protected me, and made me feel valued in ways no one ever had. She was my champion, my safe harbor in a world that had often been unkind to people like me. I had no way of knowing that the very qualities that made me love her ability to read people, her understanding of psychology, her protective instincts would eventually become the tools she'd use to systematically destroy my reputation and my sense of reality. But that revelation was still years away. For now, we were just two young people in love, building what we thought would be a life together. 2 years after graduation, I proposed to Bella on the same hill behind the student center where we'd first talked about our future. I'd been carrying the ring around for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment, but that evening just felt right. The sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, and Bella looked more beautiful than ever. "Liam," she said, before I could even get the words out, "are you about to do what I think you're about to do?" I dropped to one knee, my hands shaking slightly. "Bella Ruiz, you've made me believe in myself in ways I never thought possible. You've been my anchor, my champion, and my best friend. Will you marry me?" She said yes before I finished the question, tears streaming down her face. "Of course, yes." "Oh my God, Liam, I was wondering when you'd finally ask. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Our engagement period was magical. Bella threw herself into wedding planning with the same enthusiasm she brought to everything else. She had a vision for everything from the flowers to the music to the perfect venue. We settled on the Grandview Gardens, a beautiful, historic estate with rolling lawns and a gazebo overlooking Swan Lake. "I want everyone to see how perfect we are together," she told me as we toured the venue. "This day needs to be absolutely flawless." Her attention to detail was incredible. She coordinated with florists, caterers, and photographers with the precision of a military operation. Sometimes I felt a little overwhelmed by it all, but Bella reassured me that she just wanted our special day to be everything we'd dreamed of. "You focus on your work and let me handle this," she said, when I offered to help with some of the planning. "I'm good at managing people and making sure everything runs smoothly. Besides, you'd probably stress yourself out trying to coordinate all these vendors." She wasn't wrong. Complexity of wedding planning did seem daunting to me. I was grateful to have someone so capable taking charge. The wedding itself was everything Bella had envisioned. 200 guests gathered at Grandview Gardens on a perfect September afternoon. My college roommate Oliver served as my best man, while Bella's sister Aubrey was her maid of honor. During the ceremony, as I looked into Bella's eyes while we exchanged vows, I felt overwhelmed by gratitude. Here was this incredible woman who had chosen me, who saw past my quiet nature to the person I really was. "Liam," she said during her vows, "you taught me that love isn't about finding someone who completes you, it's about finding someone who accepts you completely. You've never tried to change me, and I promise to always treasure the gentle, kind soul that you are." There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Even my typically stoic father was wiping away tears. Our honeymoon in Tuscany was perfect. We spent 2 weeks exploring small villages, tasting wine, and talking about our dreams for the future. Bella had just completed her master's degree and was considering pursuing her doctorate, while I'd been promoted to senior systems analyst at TechVantage. "I love our life," she told me one evening, as we watched the sunset from our hotel balcony in Siena. "We're going to be so happy together, Liam. I can feel it." When we returned home, we bought our first house, a charming 3-bedroom craftsman in the Elmwood Heights neighborhood. It had a front porch where we could sit and watch the neighborhood kids play, and a backyard perfect for the garden Bella wanted to start. "This is where we'll build our family," she said as we signed the papers. "Can you picture it, little ones? Running around the backyard, family barbecues, Christmas mornings, with presents under the tree." I could picture it perfectly. For the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. Bella decided to take a year off from school to focus on building our foundation as a married couple. She took a part-time job at the Westbrook Community Center running support groups for people dealing with anxiety and depression. "I love helping people work through their problems," she told me after her first week. "There's something really rewarding about being the person someone trusts with their deepest struggles." Her clients adored her. I'd often hear her on phone calls with people who were going through difficult times, and her voice was always so soothing and understanding. She had a gift for making people feel heard and validated at home. She channeled that same nurturing energy into our relationship. She'd have dinner ready when I came home from work, often lighting candles and playing soft music. We'd talk about our days, and she'd listen intently as I described the technical challenges I was facing at work. "You're so smart, Liam," she'd say. "I love hearing about how your mind works through problems. You see solutions that other people miss." She started hosting dinner parties for our friends and neighbors, and everyone always commented on what a perfect couple we were. Bella was the vivacious hostess who kept conversation flowing, while I was the thoughtful listener who made everyone feel included. "You two are like a masterclass in marriage," our neighbor Mrs. Chen told us after one particularly successful gathering. "Bella, you bring out Liam's confidence, and Liam, you ground Bella in such a beautiful way." Even my mother, who had been skeptical of marriage in general after her own difficult divorce, was completely won over. "I've never seen you so settled and happy," she told me during one of her visits. "Bella is good for you, sweetheart. She makes you shine." Bella seemed to thrive on this recognition of our relationship. She'd beam whenever someone complimented us as a couple, and she started suggesting we attend more social events where we could be seen together. "I love showing you off," she'd tell me when I expressed hesitation about another work function or neighborhood party. "You're such an amazing husband, and I want everyone to know how lucky I am." During our second year of marriage, Bella decided to return to school for her doctorate in clinical psychology. She was accepted into the prestigious program at Metropolitan University, about an hour's drive from our home. "This is going to open so many doors for us," she said excitedly. "With my doctorate and your career trajectory, we'll be able to have the life we've always dreamed of." I was incredibly proud of her ambition and intelligence. Watching her dive into her studies with such passion reminded me of why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. She had this incredible drive to understand people and help them improve their lives. Her doctoral advisor, Dr. Patricia Morgan, became something of a mentor figure. Bella would often stay late on campus for research meetings or study groups, and she'd come home energized by the intellectual stimulation. "Dr. Morgan says I have a natural intuition for reading people's underlying motivations," she told me one evening. "She thinks I could really make a difference in the field of therapeutic intervention." Sometimes I felt a little left behind by Bella's academic world. The concepts she was studying, cognitive behavioral therapy, personality disorders, psychological manipulation, were fascinating but completely outside my area of expertise. When she'd try to explain her research to me, I sometimes felt like I couldn't fully grasp the nuances. "Don't worry about it," she'd say, when I apologized for not understanding something.
Oh,
"Not everyone can think in psychological terms."
I'll be you.
Brilliant with computers and systems, which is just as valuable. But I noticed she started spending more time discussing her studies with her classmates and less time sharing details with me. When I mentioned this, she assured me it was just because the material was so complex and specialized. "You wouldn't really be interested in the day-to-day details anyway," she said. "It's mostly theory and case studies. Pretty dry stuff unless you're really into psychology." I accepted this explanation, trusting that she knew best. After all, she was the psychology expert. Our third anniversary was approaching. I wanted to do something special to celebrate. I planned a surprise weekend getaway to the Moonrise Resort, the same place where we'd spent our first anniversary. I'd arranged for rose petals, champagne, and dinner reservations at the restaurant where we'd shared our first meal as newlyweds. When I surprised her with the trip, Bella's reaction was everything I'd hoped for. She threw her arms around me and kissed me deeply. "You're the most thoughtful husband in the world," she said. "How did I get so lucky?" That weekend felt like a renewal of our connection. We talked for hours about our dreams, our fears, and our love for each other. Bella seemed more present and attentive than she'd been in months. "I know I've been distracted with school lately," she admitted as we walked along the lake shore, "but I want you to know that you're still the most important thing in my life. Everything I'm doing is for us, for our future together." I felt reassured and more in love with her than ever. Looking back, I realized that weekend was the last time I felt completely secure in our relationship. It was the final moment of pure happiness before everything began to change, but at the time, I had no idea that Bella had already started studying something that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of our marriage: the psychology of power, dynamics and emotional manipulation in intimate relationships. She was learning in academic detail exactly how to control and influence the people closest to her, and soon, I would become her primary test subject. The first time Bella hit me, I was so shocked that I convinced myself it hadn't really happened. We'd been married for 3.5 years, and she was deep into her doctoral research on trauma and interpersonal dynamics. The incident occurred on a Thursday evening in March, after what had seemed like a perfectly normal day. I'd come home from work to find Bella in our home office, surrounded by textbooks and research papers. She looked stressed, her usually perfectly styled hair pulled back in a messy bun, her eyes red from staring at the computer screen. "How's the research going?" I asked, setting down my laptop bag and walking over to give her a kiss on the cheek. She pulled away abruptly. "It's not going well at all. Dr. Morgan rejected my proposal for the third time, and I have to present a completely new thesis concept next week. I'm sorry, that sounds really frustrating. Is there anything I can do to help? No, Liam, there's nothing you can do, she snapped. This is doctoral-level psychology research, not computer programming. You wouldn't understand the complexities involved. Her tone stung, but I tried to remain supportive. You're right, I wouldn't understand the academic side. Maybe I could help in other ways. I could order us some dinner so you don't have to worry about cooking. Or God, you're not listening to me. Bella suddenly stood up, her chair rolling backward into the wall. I just told you there's nothing you can do. Why do you always have to try to fix everything? I was taken aback by her intensity. I was just trying to help. I thought maybe before I could finish my sentence, Bella's hand connected sharply with my cheek. The slap wasn't particularly hard, but the shock of it left me speechless. We both stood there for a moment, staring at each other. Then Bella's expression crumpled. Oh my God, Liam. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I've just been under so much pressure with this research, and I haven't been sleeping well. Tears started streaming down her face. I would never hurt you intentionally. You know that, right? I touched my cheek, which was still stinging slightly. Bella, I know, and I'm horrified at myself. She stepped closer, reaching for my hands. The stress has been making me crazy. Dr. Morgan has been so critical of my work. I feel like I'm failing at the thing I'm most passionate about. But that's no excuse for taking it out on you. Looking at her tear-streaked face, I felt my anger dissolving into concern. She looked genuinely distraught, more upset about what she'd done than I was. It's okay, I heard myself saying, you're under a lot of pressure. We all react differently to stress. No, it's not okay, she insisted. I need to find better ways to manage my stress. Maybe I should talk to someone, get some counseling myself. The fact that she immediately acknowledged the wrongness of her action and suggested getting help made me feel better about the situation. Everyone makes mistakes when they're overwhelmed, I told myself. What mattered was how she responded to it. That night, Bella was extra affectionate. She cooked my favorite meal, opened a bottle of wine, and spent the evening asking about my day. And my projects at work felt like she was genuinely trying to make amends. I want you to know that what happened earlier is not who I am, she said as we got ready for bed. You've never seen me act like that before because it's not the real me. The real me loves and respects you more than anything. She was right. In over 4 years together, I'd never seen her be physically aggressive. This had to be an aberration. Caused by extreme stress? 2 weeks later, it happened again. This time, we were arguing about money. Bella wanted to attend a psychology conference in San Francisco that would cost nearly $2,000 between registration, flights, and hotels. I'd suggested that maybe we should wait until the following year when our finances were more stable. This conference could be crucial for my career, she said, her voice rising. Dr. Morgan specifically recommended that I attend. If I don't go, it could hurt my standing in the program. I understand it's important, I replied carefully. But we just put new tires on both cars, and we have that big property tax payment coming up. Maybe we could find a less expensive conference. Or this time, the slap was harder. It left my ear ringing and brought tears to my eyes. Don't you dare tell me what's good for my career, Bella hissed. You have no idea what it takes to succeed in academia. Just sit in your little cubicle writing code all day? The contempt in her voice was worse than the physical blow. But again, almost immediately, her expression changed to one of shock. And remorse, Liam? I don't know what came over me. The pressure from school, it's making me someone I don't recognize. This time, her apology felt more rehearsed, but she seemed genuinely distressed. She spent the next hour crying and talking about how the doctoral program was changing her, making her competitive and aggressive in ways that felt foreign to her nature. Maybe I should take a break from school, she said. This level of stress isn't healthy for either of us? No, I found myself saying. Your education is too important. We'll figure out how to manage the stress better. I didn't want her to sacrifice her dreams because of these incidents. They were clearly lead, and I believed they would stop once she got through this difficult period in her studies. But over the following months, the pattern began to establish itself. An argument would escalate. Bella would strike me. And then she'd be overwhelmed with remorse and incredibly loving for days afterward. Each time, she had a reasonable explanation: stress about her dissertation, pressure from her advisor, worry about our finances. What disturbed me most wasn't the physical pain, which was usually minor, but the way these incidents made me question my own behavior. Bella was studying psychology at a doctoral level. She understood human behavior and relationships in ways I couldn't. When she told me that my approach to disagreements was passive-aggressive or emotionally manipulative, I started to wonder if I was somehow provoking these reactions. "You have this way of presenting your concerns that makes me feel trapped," she explained, after one particularly heated argument about my work schedule. "It's like you're trying to control me through guilt rather than having an honest conversation." I genuinely wanted to understand what she meant. "Can you help me see how I'm doing that?" "I don't want to make you feel trapped. It's subtle," she said. "Like when you say things like, maybe we should wait until next year about the conference. You're not directly saying no, but you're creating obstacles that feel manipulative. Would be more honest if you just said you don't want me to succeed in my career." "That's not what I meant at all," I protested. "I absolutely want you to succeed. I was just worried about the financial timing, but the way you presented it was manipulative, whether you intended it or not. And when I react emotionally to feeling manipulated, you act like I'm the problem." These conversations left me feeling confused and guilty. Maybe I was approaching disagreements in unhealthy ways without realizing it. Bella was the psychology expert, after all. If she said my behavior was problematic, shouldn't I trust her assessment? I started monitoring my own words more carefully, trying to avoid anything that might come across as manipulative or controlling. But this seemed to make things worse, rather than better. Bella began pointing out patterns in my behavior that I hadn't even noticed. "You're doing that thing again where you agree with me too quickly," she said, after I accepted her suggestion. "About redecorating the living room without offering any input. It's passive-aggressive. You say yes, but then you'll find indirect ways to express your resentment later." "I'm not resentful," I said, genuinely confused. "I thought the decorating idea sounded nice, but you didn't engage with the conversation. You just said whatever you want, honey. That's not real participation in our relationship. It's emotional withdrawal." Felt like I was trapped in an impossible situation. When I disagreed with Bella, she might hit me and then explain how the approach was psychologically problematic. When I agreed with her, she accused me of being passive-aggressive. I couldn't figure out how to communicate in a way that felt safe for both of us. Around this time, Bella started sharing details about our relationship struggles with her study group and her advisor. She framed it as academic interest examining her own relationship dynamics as part of her research into interpersonal patterns. Dr. Morgan says that many people don't realize how their communication styles can be psychologically harmful to their partners, she told me after one of these conversations. She thinks it's good that I'm becoming more aware of these patterns. In my own life, the fact that Bella was discussing our private issues with her academic advisors made me uncomfortable. But she assured me that everything was kept confidential and approached from a scholarly perspective. "It's not like I'm gossiping about you," she explained. "I'm learning to recognize unhealthy relationship dynamics so I can help my future clients. Understanding my own relationship challenges is part of my professional development." What I didn't realize was that Bella was carefully crafting a narrative about our relationship that painted me as psychologically abusive while positioning herself as the victim of subtle manipulation. She was using her academic connections to build a support network of people who viewed me through the lens of her carefully constructed story. The incidents of physical violence continued, but they were always followed by such genuine seeming remorse and logical explanations that I continued to hope they would eventually stop. Bella seemed as troubled by her behavior as I was, often initiating conversations about stress management and healthy relationship communication. "I want us to be better than this," she'd say after particularly difficult episodes. "We both have things to work on, but I believe we can create a really healthy relationship if we're honest about our patterns." I wanted to believe her. I loved the woman I'd married, and I couldn't reconcile that person with someone who would intentionally hurt me. These had to be temporary problems that we could solve together. But deep down, a small voice was beginning to whisper that something was fundamentally wrong. The problem was, every time I tried to listen to that voice, Bella would present such a compelling psychological analysis of our situation that I'd end up doubting my own perceptions instead. By our 4th year of marriage, the hitting had become routine. What started as occasional stress-induced outbursts had evolved into a calculated pattern that Bella seemed to deploy whenever she wanted to end an argument in her favor. The physical strikes were no longer followed by tears and apologies. Instead, Bella would calmly explain why my behavior had necessitated her response. "You were escalating the situation with your tone," she'd say after slapping me during a disagreement about household finances. "I had to interrupt that pattern before you said something we'd both regret." The most disturbing part wasn't the violence itself, but how she'd begun framing it as a therapeutic intervention. Bella would use clinical language to describe our interactions, as if our marriage had become a case study for her doctoral research. "What you're doing right now is called stonewalling," she'd inform me when I'd fall silent after being hit. "It's a form of emotional abuse where you withdraw to punish me for setting boundaries." I felt like I was losing my mind. According to Bella, everything I did, speaking up, staying quiet, agreeing, disagreeing, was somehow psychologically harmful. She had an academic term for every response I might have, and all of them painted me as the problem in our relationship. The most effective tool in her arsenal was her ability to involve others in our conflicts. Bella had cultivated relationships with professors, classmates, and neighbors, who all viewed her as an insightful, compassionate woman pursuing her doctorate to help people with psychological trauma. When our neighbors, Mrs. Peterson, asked me how I was doing at a neighborhood barbecue, I mentioned that Bella and I had been having some communication challenges. "Oh, honey," Mrs. Peterson said, lowering her voice conspiratorially, "Bella told me she's been worried about you. She said you've been going through a really difficult time emotionally. She's trying to be supportive while managing her own stress with school." I was stunned. She said I was going through a difficult time. She didn't give me details, of course. She's very respectful of your privacy. But she mentioned that you've been struggling with some anger issues, and she's been encouraging you to talk to someone professional about it. Anger issues. I couldn't remember the last time I'd raised my voice, let alone shown inappropriate anger. But somehow, Bella had managed to convince our neighbor that I was the one with emotional problems. This became a pattern. At dinner parties, I'd noticed people treating me with a kind of careful sympathy, as if they were walking on eggshells around someone who might explode at any moment. When I tried to participate normally in conversations, I could see them exchanging glances that seemed to say, "See? He seems calm now, but you should hear what Bella has to deal with at home." Bella's study group from her doctoral program started coming to our house for weekly meetings. I'd make myself scarce during these sessions, usually retreating to my home office to work. But sometimes I'd overhear fragments of their conversations through the walls. "The challenge with emotionally abusive partners," I heard Bella saying one evening, "is that they're often very charming in public. They save their controlling behavior for private moments when there are no witnesses." "That's so insidious," one of her classmates responded. "How do you even begin to address that?" "In a therapeutic setting, it requires a lot of patience and validation," Bella replied. "The victim often doesn't even realize what's happening because the abuse is so subtle. Gaslighting, emotional manipulation, financial control can take years for someone to recognize the patterns." I realized with a chill that she was talking about me. Somehow, in her academic discussions, I had become the emotionally abusive partner that she was learning to treat. The financial control accusation was particularly bewildering. Bella had complete access to all our accounts and made most of our major financial decisions. If anything, I felt like I had very little input into how our money was spent. But when I tried to bring this up, she explained it differently. "You use money as a way to control my choices," she said. "Whenever I want to do something for my career or personal growth, you find reasons why we can't afford it. That's financial abuse, Liam." She was referring to times I'd expressed concern about expensive conferences or suggested we budget more carefully. In my mind, these were normal discussions that couples should have about major expenses. But Bella had reframed them as attempts to sabotage her professional development. The most devastating blow came when she involved my mother. During one of my mom's visits, I noticed her acting strangely around me, more tentative than usual, like she was afraid of saying the wrong thing. On the last day of her visit, she pulled me aside for a private conversation. Liam, sweetheart, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Her voice was gentle, but serious. Are you getting the help you need for your stress and anger? What are you talking about, Mom? Bella mentioned that you've been going through a really hard time lately. She said work has been stressful, and you've been taking it out on her sometimes. My mother's eyes were filled with concern. She didn't want to worry me, but she's scared, honey. The room seemed to spin around me. Mom, I have never. Bella is the one who I know this is hard to hear, she interrupted. But Bella showed me some bruises on her arms, she said. You grabbed her during an argument last week. Bruises. Bella had shown my mother bruises and claimed I had given them to her. I felt like I was drowning. That's not what happened, I said weakly. Mom, you have to believe me. I would never hurt Bella. She's the one who... But even as I tried to explain, I could see the doubt in my mother's eyes. Here was Bella, the sweet, accomplished woman, pursuing her doctorate in psychology to help abuse victims, showing physical evidence of violence. And here was I, her increasingly isolated and apparently emotionally unstable husband, denying responsibility. Honey, the first step is admitting there's a problem, my mother said softly. Bella loves you, and she wants to work through this, but you need to get professional help. That night, after my mother left, I confronted Bella about the conversation. Could you tell my mother that I hurt you? How could you show her fake bruises? Bella's response was calm and clinical. First of all, those bruises weren't fake. You grabbed my arm quite forcefully during our argument about your mother's visit. Maybe you don't remember because you were so angry, but you left marks. I did remember the argument she was referring to. She'd been criticizing my mother's housekeeping. Suggestions, and when I'd tried to defend my mom, the discussion had escalated. But I had no memory of grabbing Bella's arm, let alone hard enough to leave bruises. Second, Bella continued, I didn't tell your mother anything that wasn't true. You have been under a lot of stress, and you have been taking it out on me. I'm concerned about your mental health, and I thought your mother should be aware of what's happening. But you made it sound like I'm abusive, I protested. Aren't you? She asked quietly. You may not hit me the way some abusers do, but emotional manipulation and intimidation are forms of abuse too. And now apparently physical grabbing is escalating the pattern. The way she said it so calm, so reasonable, backed by her expertise in psychology made me question everything I thought I knew about our relationship. Was I abusive? Had I grabbed her arm without remembering? Was my perception of our relationship completely distorted? That week, Bella suggested we start couples counseling. I think it would be good for both of us to have a neutral professional help us work through these communication patterns, she said. I've found a therapist who specializes in relationship dynamics and conflict resolution. The therapist she'd chosen was Dr. Richard Peterson, a colleague of her doctoral advisor. From the very first session, I felt like I was on trial rather than participating in couples therapy, Dr. Peterson said during our initial meeting. Bella has shared some concerns about escalating conflicts in your relationship. Can you tell me how you typically handle disagreements? Everything I said seemed to be interpreted through the lens of Bella's narrative. When I mentioned feeling frustrated by some of Bella's behaviors, Dr. Peterson would probe for signs of controlling tendencies. When I described my perspective on our financial disagreements, he'd explore whether I was using money to manipulate Bella's choices. Meanwhile, when Bella spoke, her words were received as insights from someone with professional training in psychology who was trying to save a troubled relationship. I love Liam deeply, she'd say, but I'm concerned about these patterns of emotional manipulation. I understand that he may not even realize he's doing it, which is why I think therapy could be so helpful. After each session, I'd leave feeling more confused and guilty than before. Was I really the problem in our marriage? Everyone seemed to think so. Dr. Peterson, my mother, our neighbors, Bella's academic colleagues. Why could all these people be wrong? The isolation was becoming unbearable. I'd lost confidence in my own perceptions and started avoiding social situations where I might encounter the people who viewed me as an emotionally abusive husband. My work performance began to suffer as I struggled with constant self-doubt and anxiety. Bella, meanwhile, seemed to thrive. Her dissertation research was going well. she was building strong professional relationships. And she appeared to have the support and sympathy of everyone who knew about our situation. The few times I tried to reach out to friends or family for support, I found myself unable to articulate what was really happening. How could I explain that my wife was hitting me when she had convinced everyone that I was the abusive one? Could I describe emotional manipulation tactics when she was the one with expertise in psychology? I began to wonder if I was losing my sanity. Maybe everyone was right, and I was the problem. Maybe the hitting wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Maybe my emotional reactions were inappropriate, and Bella was just trying to help me see that. But late at night, alone with my thoughts, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly fundamentally wrong with our situation. The problem was, I had no idea how to prove it to her, even if I should trust my own judgment anymore. The moment that changed everything happened on a Tuesday evening in October, 5 years after the abuse had begun. I was arriving home early from work when I heard Bella on the phone in our living room. She was speaking in hushed tones, but the house was quiet, and her voice carried clearly through the hallway. "No, Aubrey, you don't understand," she was saying to her sister. "Dr. Peterson is completely buying into the narrative. Tomorrow's session is going to be perfect." I froze in the entryway, my hands still on the door handle. "I've been setting it up for weeks," Bella continued, her voice carrying a tone I'd never heard before, cold and calculating. "Liam is so beaten down psychologically that he'll probably just sit there and take it when I escalate things. And if he doesn't, even better. Dr. Peterson will see his anger issues firsthand." My blood turned to ice, crept closer to the living room, staying out of sight but positioning myself where I could hear every word. "The beauty of it is that I actually understand psychology," Bella was saying. "I know exactly which buttons to push to get the reaction I want, and I know exactly how to frame it afterward, so that Dr. Peterson sees what I want him to see. But what if Liam tries to defend himself?" Aubrey's voice was faint through the phone, but I could make out her words. Bella laughed a sound completely. "Devoid of the warmth I'd once fallen in love with, he won't. 5 years of conditioning have made sure of that. But if he does, I'll just trigger him until he gets upset, then point to his reaction as proof of his instability. Dr. Peterson
already thinks Liam has anger management issues.
It won't take much to convince him that couples therapy isn't enough, that Liam needs individual psychiatric treatment. The next day, I sat in Dr. Peterson's office with a recording app discreetly running on my phone, knowing this might be my only chance to document what was about to happen. Bella seemed unusually energetic, almost excited. "Dr. Peterson," she began, "I want to discuss something that happened last night." Liam became very aggressive during a simple conversation about household responsibilities. She was lying. We'd barely spoken the night before, but I had learned that correcting her lies only made me look defensive, so I remained silent. "Can you tell me more about this incident, Bella?" Dr. Peterson asked, his pen poised over his notepad. Well, I simply asked Liam if he could take on more of the grocery shopping, since my dissertation research has been keeping me so busy. His response was completely disproportionate. She launched into a detailed fabrication about me yelling at her, accusing her of being lazy, and making threats about financial support for her education. None of it had happened. But she told the story with such conviction that I could see Dr. Peterson believing every word. "Liam," Dr. Peterson turned to me, "how do you remember this conversation?"
That
"Conversation never happened," I said quietly. Bella's face immediately crumpled into hurt and confusion. "Dr. Peterson, this is exactly what I mean." Liam rewrites history to make himself look better. He can't take responsibility for his actions. "I'm not rewriting anything," I said, feeling my frustration building. "Bella, you're lying about what happened. We barely spoke last night." "See?" Bella turned to Dr. Peterson with tears in her eyes. "He's calling me a liar now. This is the kind of gaslighting I deal with every day." I felt the familiar trap closing. Around me, anything I said would be used as evidence of my psychological problems. But this time, something in me snapped. "You know what, Bella? You're right. Let's talk about gaslighting." I stood up, my voice remaining calm but firm. Let's talk about how you've spent 5 years hitting me and then convincing everyone that I'm the abusive one." For just a split second, I saw genuine surprise flash across Bella's face. Then, as if on cue, she picked up her coffee mug from the side table and hurled it directly at my head. The mug shattered against the wall behind me, ceramic shards scattering across Dr. Peterson's office floor. But instead of reacting with shock or concern about her violent outburst, Bella immediately dissolved into tears. "He pushed me," she sobbed, pointing at me. "Dr. Peterson. He grabbed my arm and pushed me. I was just trying to protect myself." I hadn't moved from where I was standing. Dr. Peterson had witnessed the entire incident. There was no way he could have missed the fact that Bella had thrown the mug unprovoked, or that she was now lying about physical contact that had never occurred. But as I looked at Dr. Peterson's face, I realized with horror that he wasn't seeing what had actually happened. He was seeing what Bella had conditioned him to see: a woman defending herself against an aggressive husband. "Liam, I need you to sit down and remain calm," Dr. Peterson said, his voice taking on the tone of someone de-escalating a dangerous situation. That was the moment I understood completely. It didn't matter what I said or did. It didn't matter what anyone witnessed. Bella had constructed such a compelling narrative about our relationship that reality itself had become secondary to the story she'd created. But this time, I had evidence. This time, I had recorded everything. That night, I transferred the recording to a secure cloud account, packed a single bag with essential items, and left our house forever. I didn't leave a note. I didn't try to explain, simply disappeared from Bella's life as completely as if I had never existed. The truth was about to come out. And this time I had proof that even Bella's psychological expertise couldn't manipulate away. 3 months after I disappeared, I played the recording from that final therapy session for my divorce attorney, Sarah Martinez. Her reaction was everything I had hoped: foreshock, outrage, and complete validation of what I had endured. "This is one of the most calculated cases of psychological manipulation I've ever encountered," she told me.
Ow.
The way she throws the mug and immediately lies about physical contact that never happened, it's all right there on the recording. We submitted the audio evidence along with detailed documentation. I had secretly gathered during those final weeks photos of injuries Bella had inflicted, screenshots of her contradictory statements to different people, and testimony from the few witnesses who had begun to see through her facade. The revelation sent shockwaves through Bella's academic and social circles. Dr. Peterson was forced to acknowledge his failure to recognize the manipulation happening in his own office. Several of Bella's professors began questioning the integrity of her research, particularly her studies on domestic abuse and psychological manipulation. Research that now appeared to have been based on her own tactics rather than genuine academic inquiry. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The woman pursuing a doctorate in psychology to help abuse victims had been systematically abusing her own husband while convincing everyone he was the perpetrator. 6 months later, I learned that Bella had been quietly asked to leave her doctoral program. The recording had made its way through her academic network. The reputation she had built as a compassionate advocate for abuse victims crumbled overnight. The very tools she had used to destroy my credibility, her psychological expertise, and professional relationships became instruments of her own downfall. Today, 2 years later, I'm rebuilding my life with a clarity I haven't felt in over a decade. I've learned that domestic abuse doesn't discriminate by gender, and that psychological manipulation can be just as devastating as physical violence. The shame that kept me silent for so long has been replaced by a determination to help other men who might be trapped in similar situations. Most importantly, I've learned to trust my own perceptions again. That small voice that whispered something was wrong. It was right all along. Sometimes the people who claim to love us most are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal, and recognizing that truth isn't weakness, it's survival. Bella taught me about psychological manipulation, and she also taught me about my own strength. Walking away from that therapy session wasn't just an escape, it was the moment I chose to reclaim my reality in my life. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. This one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.